I'm going to get started, everybody. Good morning. I'm Commissioner of Rachel Iver of the City of Chicago Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. Thank you so much to everybody who have joined today. Some housekeeping. So we have American Sign Language interpreter here. We are spotlighting our interpreter. And please let us know if you have any other access needs. I will provide a brief visual description. I am a white woman with the brown curly hair. I am hazelized and I'm coming from my city hall office, and I'm wearing a white dress with seashells added. Thank you so much for joining us for our training at serving customers with disabilities. And I want to thank our partners today who helped to make this training possible. First, I want to thank Ross and the Jewish Chicago team. Ross has been an incredible partner, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Ross. I also want to thank Robert Jones from the Democratic National Professional Committee, who is working at local plans. Yes, sorry, I'm talking too fast. And then I also want to thank the City Department Business Affairs and Consumer Protection and the City of Chicago Commission on Human Relations, the Illinois Restaurant Association, and the Illinois Hotel Atlantic Association, Infinity, and of course, my team here at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. So today's training is merely a guide. We want to help give you some ideas about how to be accessible. I want to make very clear we're not saying that anyone is not accessible, we just want to share information about ways that we could all work together. And me and my team are very happy to provide any questions, information. We're here to support all of you as we expect 50,000 visitors to our city in 2 weeks. I'm checking to see if Robert Jones is here. And I do not see her outline yet, so I am going to turn it over to Claire. And if she joins, we will make sure to give her some time to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Stanhope, and I am the training officer at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. I'll give a visual description. So I am a white woman with long blonde brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy top with polka dots. And I'm going to pass it over to our Deputy Commissioner, Christina McLean, to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina McLean. I'm the Deputy Commissioner here at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about disability. My visual description is I am a white woman with blondish hair up today. I have a headset on. I'm wearing a teal dress with a black blazer and a necklace. Thanks again for joining us. So I will get us started by just going over some of the goals of this presentation. We hope by the end of this training, you are able to learn a little bit more about disability and why it's so important in your line of work. Some types of accessibility that could be used to effectively communicate with people with disabilities, and then how to best serve customers with disabilities. And we'll start with a brief introduction here about MOPD. MOPD's vision is to be the most inclusive and accessible city in the world. And we, strive to do this through our various programs and services that we offer in order to help Chicagoans with disabilities be more independent in the community. And we do this also through working with other city departments to ensure that visitors as well are able to play in this city that we love so much in an accessible way. Language is a really important facet of the work that we do. We want to make sure that we are talking about people with disabilities in a way that is inclusive. This chart really goes over some different terminology that we should use, and that is best practice in how we talk about disability. And I'll just go over some of these briefly. But when we are talking about disability, it's important that we use person-first language. So for example, I am a person with a disability instead of a disabled person. That is, that is best practice, but it is not always, how everyone wants to be referred to. So if you are unsure, the best thing to do is to ask. But we always tell people to, if you're erring on the side of caution, to refer people in person first language. Some important terminology just to be aware of is that it's fine to say disability. Disability is a totally appropriate word, and people with disabilities are proud of that. And accessible. We do not use the word handicapped. That is a dated term that is no longer appropriate. And it has a derogatory meaning. So using the term accessible is the way to refer to things such as parking spots or restrooms. You would say it's an accessible restroom. The other words here on this chart go into things like individuals who have intellectual or developmental disabilities. We want to make sure that that's how they are referred to. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing prefer to be called, and it's more appropriate to call them deaf or hard of hearing instead of hearing impaired. And lastly, service animals is the best way to refer to the dogs that you may see in your restaurants, helping individuals with disabilities perform a variety of tasks. We'll go over that a little bit more later, but service animals can do a variety of things. So calling them that is the appropriate way of referring to them instead of seeing eye dog, as dogs don't see for individuals who are blind. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Christina. This is Claire. So talking about disability is important, and disability is something or anything that limits a person's ability to participate in activities or their surrounding world. And so it is really common in the United States. About 27% of adults in the US, which is about 61 million people, report living with at least one disability. And we know that this is very common, 1 in 4, but this is also underreported because disability has a lot of different definitions. So somebody may not identify as having a disability or disclose that disability. So it's already really common, and we know that it's underreported. Currently, related to the DNC, over 700 individuals who will be visiting have identified an accommodation need. So an accommodation is a change or a modification that someone might need due to a disability. So 700 individuals who are either delegates or donors or members of special interest groups have identified that they need a change or a modification because of a disability. This number only represents those who are attending the DNC. So it's not including the many family members who will be coming with delegates or donors, and it's not accounting for the tourists who will be in Chicago as a result of this exciting event. So as Commissioner Arfa mentioned, there will be 50,000 people in town for the DNC. And this means that 13,500 people with disabilities will be coming to Chicago. And we want them to be able to access and enjoy the excellent restaurants that you all have here. So 27% of people have a disability, and 20% of adults report living with at least one invisible disability. So an invisible disability is a disability that is not obvious from looking at someone. So we want to be prepared to interact with people with disabilities, but we may not always be able to identify who has a disability. So you could be serving an individual with a disability at any time without knowing it. Customers with disabilities have a huge spending power that we're hoping they're going to bring to our restaurants and businesses here in Chicago. So it's estimated that people with disabilities and their family have about $13 trillion in spending power. And $500 billion is disposable income for people with disabilities, which means that that's income that they're using for anything, including restaurants. Also, within 12 months, travelers with disabilities reported spending more on average than travelers without disabilities. So they're coming into our cities and they're spending money, and it's important to be able to serve them. Lastly, what encouraged individuals with disabilities to travel? 80% of people said that it was having accessibility information before visiting about where they're going, which is why it's important for us to be accessible. I've mentioned accessibility a few times. And so what is accessibility? In the context of restaurants, it's about how our guests are able to access the restaurant spaces and the services that you have. So there are 3 different types of accessibility to think about. The first one is physical, and that one can be a little bit easier to think about because it's very tangible. So physical access may be how somebody's able to enter or exit your space. It may be how they're able to move around the space. That's physical access. Digital access is how people are able to go onto your website or interact with your social media. That would be more digital access. And lastly, communication access would be how individuals are able to communicate with people within your space. Why does accessibility matter? It is the law under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, but it also makes sure that all people, regardless of their abilities, can interact with the excellent food, the information, the services that you all provide, and it benefits everybody. So a good example of this would be a ramp to enter your restaurant rather than having stairs. If you have a ramp, people who are using a wheelchair or a mobility aid are able to enter the restaurant, as well as people who are walking, or tourists who have their suitcases, or parents with strollers. So it really makes your space accessible for everybody, which is why accessibility is so important.
Hi, this is Christina speaking. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about disability access in restaurants. And we're going to start off, and you'll hear from a few different individuals this morning on some of our lived experience as people with disabilities who've frequented a lot of different restaurants in our time, and just some really good experiences that we've had, and reasons why we feel it's important to go back to those places and support those places, because they took time to ensure that their space was accessible. So I will be speaking to you as an individual who is low vision. I'm also a service animal handler, and we'll get more into service animals too, as we go on in this training. But I will tell you that as someone with low vision, and I think this is probably common in with other disability types as well, I definitely check out websites prior to going to a restaurant. Instead of having someone have to read the menu to me, I like to check it out on the computer to make sure that I have an idea of what is, what I can order and have some options ready. So one thing I would say is that it's really important to have accessible and updated websites. I have, been a victim of ordering something that is no longer on the menu because the website wasn't updated. So I always come with options, but it is, really helpful for someone with low vision to come in prepared, or to have an idea of what some food options are. I've also had really good experiences with waiters or waitresses who have, you know, been able to tell me where different features are in the restaurant, maybe where the restroom is, knowing that I have a visual impairment and it's not as simple as just saying, oh, it's down the hall over there. Over there doesn't really mean a lot to people who are low vision. So being very verbal, being very descriptive is important and helpful. As a service animal handler, I am fairly new to this. My guide and I have been a team for about a year, so we have had limited experiences in restaurants, but most have been very well, been very good. People are excited to see a dog, and she's so well behaved that it doesn't, cause any issues. And we definitely will talk more about service animals, but I've had a variety of different experiences where maybe wait staff has made a little bit more room. So my dog Jade is able to have more room under the table. And also maybe sat me away from other people just so it doesn't distract them or me. And lastly, I've also had incidents or it times when people have brought her water. It's really nice and very inclusive, and it is also good on warm summer days, which we may encounter here with the DNC. So those were just some good lived experiences that I've had as an individual with low vision. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about best practices in serving individuals who are low vision or blind, and some really good tips to help be more inclusive and accessible. They're pretty easy. The first one is to introduce yourself, explain your role, and why you're there to help. So for example, hi, my name is Jane. I'm the hostess. I'm going to take you to your seat. Um, and then maybe offering your elbow. That's a way to provide wayfinding assistance to someone who's blind or visually impaired. So that individual will just hold on to your elbow. You want to make sure that they're holding on to you and you're not holding on to them. But by them holding onto your elbow, you can guide them around obstacles and help them safely get to their table. You can use verbal cues too to um, help allow them to kind of navigate that space. And that's important too if you want to direct them to a restaurant, a restroom, for example, or anything else that, maybe the bar. So it's all really good just to be verbal or offer your elbow so that you can guide them to the space. We know sometimes these places are really busy, and it could be hard for someone who's blind or low vision to navigate that space. So it's just a good practice to be able to provide that wayfinding assistance. Not everybody has the time to check out the menu before they get to a restaurant. So if you see someone who is blind or visually impaired, if that's something that, if they have a service animal or a white cane, those are good indications. But you can offer to assist them with the menu. I think people generally have an idea of what they want to eat, so maybe you won't have to read the whole thing, but you can, maybe they'll ask you to tell them what kind of salad you have, things like that to help speed up that process or to help make that process more accessible. You also might need to direct them to more information on the bill or be able to help them sign by just placing your hand, directing their hand to where that would be. When you are serving individuals food, tips like giving them clock cues as to where you place things is really helpful. So saying like your water is at 12 o'clock and your silverware is at 3 o'clock is very helpful. Blind and low vision individuals use clock cues a lot in mobility and orientation to best support their navigation. So those are just some helpful tips. And our pro tip here for individuals who are blind or low vision is kind of what I talked about with the menu. Ensuring that your menu is up to date and accessible. Formats like HTML and Word documents are accessible. Not all PDFs are accessible, so that is something important to check out on your websites. PDFs do need to be created with accessibility in mind. So we tend to encourage people to use other formats like HTML or Word. All right, I'm going to go over briefly some information about service animals. We get a lot of questions about this when we do our trainings, but service animals are recognized by the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they provide assistance to individuals with a disability, and they perform a specific task. So people who operate or use service animals are referred to as handlers. And if there's ever any questions about if the animal is a service animal, the ADA allows you to ask 2 questions, and that is the animal a service animal required due to a disability? And if they say yes, you can ask what tasks the dog is trained to perform. Service animals are either dogs or miniature horses. We haven't seen a miniature horse here yet in Chicago, but please let us know if you do, because I think that would be really cool. So you're most likely just going to see some dogs. They should be very well behaved. You should not pet the dogs. They are working, and distracting them could be dangerous for their handler. And service animals are different than emotional support animals. So emotional support animals are not trained to perform a specific task due to a disability, and that's what makes them different. It's important that service animals are in control. They are required to be in control, and if not, you can ask them to leave. You're not supposed to deny access to the individual, but the service animal. So often that means that an individual would need to leave and come back without their service animal. But service animals are allowed in all public places. And they should be very well behaved. They should not bark more than once in a quiet space. And they should be leashed unless unless it impacts the service that they provide to their handler. Service animals also are, they're very well behaved, and you should not see any issues. If you do need to remove the service animal for a specific reason, we do recommend that you have some sort of policy that documents the incident, similar to how you would ask someone if someone was being disruptive in your restaurant to leave. Document that process. And our pro tip here is that it's good to have a safe space identified as a good place for someone with a service animal to have that dog relieve themselves there. Handlers are required to pick up after the service animal. So that should not be an issue. And service animals are trained to relieve themselves on concrete. So it's not like they need to go to a park to do that. But it's good to have an idea of where the closest grassy area is in case someone asks you. And now I will turn it over to Nathaniel Kelly, who will talk about his experience.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is, it's a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Nathaniel Kelly, and I am a brown complected man with bald hair and a beard, and I'm wearing a white shirt. One second, please. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with my computer. Okay, I think we're good. I'm the program coordinator for the SUPT program. This is the Substance Use Prevention Program for deaf and hard of hearing students that attend CPS, Chicago Public Schools. So I'm going to give my lived experience with restaurants. I actually have quite an extensive experience, but I'll just pick two for this presentation. Sometimes when you have deaf individuals who are in restaurants that would like to know the daily specials, or would like to know more information about the menu food options, when they find out the consumer is deaf, they tend to not want to engage. So a tip that can be used is to actually use your phone. That might be easier or faster. I think the phone will be faster than writing notes. The second tip that I would give, or the experience that I've had, is for birthday celebrations. It's recommended that you do the deaf applause, which you see me doing here for deaf and hard of hearing individuals, because it's visual and it's easier to relate to. And there's one last tip I'd like to give. Recently, I'm starting to notice that when the wait staff comes to the table, once they engage with the consumers, they've actually picked up and learned how to sign thank you in American Sign Language. And that makes more of a connection with your individuals who are at restaurants. So that's just a recommendation, maybe looking up to finding the sign for thank you. And that's it.
Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Commissioner Arfa, who's going to talk about individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting for the interpreter to be back at spot then. Perfect. Hi, everyone. This is Commissioner Arfa. So thank you so much, Nathaniel, for those tips. I agree. I hate not being able to know what the specials are. It was always my most dreaded moment when the server comes to the table because I could never understand what the specials are. And I'm a foodie, so I appreciate that. Don't forget other tools you have to be able to communicate. For example, opening up the Nose app at your phone, or writing down a paper, and ask people, how do you want to communicate? Sometimes it could even mean asking for a table that's in a quieter area for people with hearing aids or cochlear implants to be able to hear access auditory hearing a little bit. A lot of the people can read, but a lot of the people are not good readers. And if it's noisy, even somebody who's a good reader might have a hard time. White people are hard to read. For example, for me, it's hard for me to read someone who has a mustache or beard. It makes it impossible because it covers up what they're saying and the facial expressions. Yeah, as Nathaniel said, it's really helpful to be able to see your face in a facial expression, and it really goes that way. And it's also really, I agree with Nathaniel, it's really nice with the wearable sign. And thank you. So those are just some of the tips here. I'm gonna turn this over.
Hi, this is Claire. Coach Kenneth Jennings is not able to join us at this moment, so I'm just going to share a little bit about what he shared with us was his lived experience. So Coach Kenneth Jennings is a high school football coach and an incredible disability advocate, and he is someone who uses a wheelchair. And some of the things that he shared with us are super helpful is when somebody provides him with a straw that is not those teeny tiny little straws that you may get from a bar, but a full-sized straw, because he needs to be able to drink water throughout the entire meal. And those can be very challenging for somebody to use to be able to drink their water. So having a variety of straws can be really helpful for him. The other experience he shared with us was that it's helpful when the waiter allows him to order his food first and then his companion to get their food second. Because Kenneth needs somebody to assist him with eating. And so he said when he's able to order his food first, it can be really helpful because then his companion can help him eat and then they're able to eat their meal afterwards. So to share some tips about people with mobility disabilities, it's helpful when you offer a variety of table heights because not everybody can use every size of table. So those bar tables that typically are a little bit taller in height can be sometimes challenging for people who are using wheelchairs or for people who aren't able to get up on the stools. Some people who use wheelchairs may want to stay in their chair for the meal, and then you could just remove the chair sitting at their table, or they may choose to transfer out of their wheelchairs and sit in one of the restaurant chairs. So it's always helpful to ask someone their preference. When assisting somebody, be careful not to touch them or their assistive device, such as their wheelchair, without permission. So I think sometimes we want to be helpful. And so we're thinking we'll just push them over to the table in their wheelchair, but it's really their personal space. So we want to be very respectful of that. Also, if the person who is using a mobility device is communicating with you, just speak directly to them and not the person who is with them. And we covered this a little bit through Kenneth's experience, but it can be really helpful when you provide straws to the individual, offering them a straw that can be used throughout the meal. As a pro tip, for people who are using mobility devices, but also your waiters and waitresses and all of your wait staff, it's helpful when you keep the path of travel between tables clear so that people are able to navigate to the restroom, to an exit, and they're not tripping over hazards. And also to make sure that there's enough space between the tables so that people who are using mobility devices are able to navigate. So now I am going to turn it over to Ned Williams, who's going to share his lived experience with us.
So my name is Ned Williams, and I am an autistic individual. I work for Infiniteach, and Infiniteach does also provide trainings stuff. But now I'm also an experienced traveler. I've traveled all over the place, and I love eating at various restaurants, and a lot of them and I have a lot of restaurants I like in Chicago. Now, with restaurants, one of my biggest complaints about restaurants is a lot of them, so in particular, but someone with autism can frequently have trouble when it comes to text-based information, especially if someone like me is a visual learner, not a text learner. So therefore, a menu that's all text, it can be sometimes very challenging to understand what the menu is, especially if there's like an ingredient as part of the meal you're ordering that you don't have never heard of before. So therefore, having either the main menu having a visualization of maybe the ingredients as well as the final product of the dish would be very helpful. And if it's not possible to do it on the main menu, just maybe just have an option that can be provided upon request that has visual stuff on the menu. Because for me and many people with autism, when it comes to the food we eat, we can be very picky, so it helps to know ahead of time what the dish you're ordering is, so you can tell if it's something you would like. That would be very helpful. And then also, as autism is also what's known as a sensory disability, it is also an invisible disability, so you wouldn't know someone who has it just by looking at them. Basically, it also, but because it's a sensory disability, things like background music or background sound in general might be very bothersome for someone with autism, even background sound at a level that someone without autism wouldn't even notice. Can be a problem. So restaurants being able to offer either a quiet time where like they cater to people with sensory disabilities, where they don't play background music, or they limit the number of people in there to make it quieter, something like that, or at least a space where you can go into restaurants where it is quieter if the background noise becomes too much for the individual. Stuff like that would be very helpful, and I feel like it's something a lot of restaurants don't have the option of when more should. So
Thank you, Ned. That's super helpful to hear about your experiences. So Ned told us that he identifies as a person with autism, and that is a type of neurodiversity. And so neurodiversity is a difference in how people may think or may behave or interact. And so this can also include people who have cognitive, developmental, or intellectual disabilities. And it can also include individuals who have ADHD and other types of disabilities. So some tips that can be helpful is to use plain language when you're communicating. And so this just means making sure that your message can be understood the first time someone hears it. And if it's not understood, you can rephrase, and that is helpful. So sometimes when people don't understand, we repeat the same things over and over again, but what can be really helpful is to rephrase to make sure that it's understood. Also, Ned talked to us about how useful pictures can be, and pictures can help everyone in communication. I know a lot of people who like to look up Instagram accounts before they go out to eat so that they can see what the food is going to look like.
Mhm.
If you're sharing specials or lists of options like salad dressings or sides, it can be helpful to write down the information or to give people a moment to think about their choices. So if they order a salad and they're not sure about the dressing, saying, no problem, I'll come back in a few minutes, allowing them some time to think about their choices. And then Ned also mentioned the sensory input. Something I like to mention is we don't always think about our clothing that is touching our bodies, but when it's mentioned to us, we realize that we can feel it, right? And so similarly, people who are experiencing different sensory experiences differently, they may always be able to notice their clothing or always notice the sound of the air conditioning. So just being really mindful of the input that you have in your space and providing a space without all of that input. So a pro tip would be to have an up-to-date website so that individuals who are neurodiverse are able to go to your website, see pictures of the food, and understand what to experience during that visit to your restaurant. And I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Grishma Shah, who's going to give us a little bit more lived experience as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, so my visual description is that I'm an Indian woman with curly brown hair, brown skin, wearing a white dress, and behind me is a white wall with some paintings that I've created. Now, I value my disability identity very much. It's taught me a lot about human behavior and the field of belonging, perhaps so much so I actually have a doctorate in psychology along with being a professional artist. And so I have a lot of meetings at restaurants and I enjoy eating out with friends. So if the accessible ramp to the restaurant is through the back, it's really important to indicate it on the website so that these access points we know are provided, but we also know where they're located. And it allows guests to have the agency to decide where they want to go as a group. So some pro tips are have an accessible ramp in the front of the restaurant rather than in the back, where usually the garbage is being taken out, so that everyone can enter together rather than having to separate. And then the pro tip number 2 is to evaluate if your website is accessible, you need to have it audited. And it has to be audited by paid disabled consultants to ensure that it's going to be accessible to various guests, because these kinds of skill sets come from lived experiences. And if you'd like to know more about this, you're very welcome to email me. I will put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. So for individuals with mental health conditions, sometimes eating in restaurants can be a stressful experience, but we never want to make assumptions about someone's mental health, right? People can be upset about an experience without having a mental health condition. It can be helpful to use I statements, which are statements that start when talking about yourself. So if somebody's upset, saying, I hear that you're upset right now, I'm gonna go back to the kitchen and fix your order. And NAMI hotline is 988. You are able to call, text, or chat them if you ever do have somebody who's in your restaurant who's having a mental health crisis, or if you need to consult with them.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you sharing. Hold on, I need to fix this button. Okay, I'm gonna make sure everybody can always see the interpreter. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your experiences with disability. I also want to share about the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, which is responsible for enforcing the human rights ordinance, but we partner with them, and they can also provide mediation services and information. So this is just another available visuals here. We are so happy to partner with them. Some key takeaways from today are: number 1, be open-minded. Disability covariant definition, and in visibility, a perfect example of that is one of our participants, Kate, at this program shared that she likes to use the term here comparing absolutely whatever term we use for yourself is the right term. So that's a beautiful example of how we as people with disabilities define ourselves in any number of ways. If there's no claim, we should respect that person's choice. Number 2 is to prioritize access. As we highlighted, accessibility for everybody. It makes all of our experiences better. It is not only for people with disabilities. And then number 3, listen to others. People with disabilities will tell you if we need help, and if we don't, to that the next slide is there's a ton of ways to connect with us. We would love to work together and continue to be a resource for anybody at this meeting. be providing disability related training just like this one. We also have a career center that help people with disabilities got jobs in the city. So if you are a person with a disability who lives in Chicago and you want help getting a job, contact us. If you are an employer who wants to hire people with disabilities, we would love to partner with you as well. And then we also have an accessibility compliance unit, which includes our contacts. If we can help provide information about accessibility and technical assistance, and also any question, we are here for other people. In now, before we opening up, I do better see if Robert Jones wanted to come up and introduce herself. So hold on, I'm afraid we need to cut the interpreter back at the screen of Robin. So hold on for a second. Okay, ready to go. Thank you so much,
Great.
Robert, for joining us.
Thank you and welcome everybody. My name is Robin Jones and I'm the Accessibility Advisor for the host committee as well as the DNCC. And I'm happy to see everybody here. We've been working hard to address accessibility for those that are attending the convention. And we have put in many things in place and we are welcoming you as partners in this process, as we know that many of our attendees will be visiting and using your facilities throughout the time that they are here in Chicago. We are focused on ensuring that the convention itself is accessible and have made many plans to accommodate people with sensory disabilities, with physical disabilities, mental health, et cetera. And if you have any questions about accessibility at the convention itself, please feel free to reach out to me. And my email is just rjones,